Okay, I'm going to explain your assignment for the day. I would like you to do the 1.1 to 1.2 worksheet on integers and absolute value. You might see a couple things on the top, like of each page, where they come from the notes. That's because I would like to review integers on the first page and absolute value on the second page. I'll go through some of these examples on the first page just to show you what I expect, and then I expect you to complete the rest as your assignment for the day. Okay, so I'm going to go through the definition first of all, and we're starting with integers. This word right here is very important for us, especially for this chapter, because every lesson in this chapter is going to use integers. So we're going to be using those. What those are is it's the set of positive and negative whole numbers. So numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. But we're talking about whole numbers here, not decimals or fractions, which is kind of nice because decimals and fractions can get messy. Well, we're dealing with only whole numbers, but the only issue is we have the negative ones also. Okay, some examples, and it's really easy to write examples of an integer, like 2 would be an integer, 99 would be an integer, 5, just any whole number. But then we also want to include the negatives as well, like -4, -1, -8, just any negative whole. So like examples of integers would be positive and negative wholes. However, there's kind of a math way to write this, so instead of just writing like random numbers down, it shows what we mean. So I'm going to go like this. Dot, 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 -3, comma, -2, comma, -1, comma, 0, 1, 2, 3, comma, dot, dot, dot. And what that means is it just kind of shows the pattern continues both directions, and we're counting by ones because we just want the wholes. 0 is a special integer. It's the only one that's not positive or negative, but we're just counting in the positive direction, whole numbers, and the negative direction, whole numbers. Well, now let's go over and write some non-examples. Basically, fractions and decimals don't count. 1/3 would be not an integer. 0.2 would be not an integer. 3 and 1/4 would not be an integer. Pi is not an integer. 0.6 repeating, not an integer. Those aren't integers because they're not whole numbers. So again, that should be a review for you guys. We're looking at positive and negative wholes. So we have these examples here. What I want you to do is you have to write not yes or no, integer or not an integer, and then explain why. Well, 5 is going to be an integer, so you would write integer, and then your reason would be it's a positive whole number. For number 2, we have the number 7/10, and we would write not an integer, and our reason would either be it's a fraction, or it would be it's not a whole number. So you can go through and do the rest. Now, the next set of questions has you have to write a integer for the situation. So the first one is a football team loses 3 yards. Well, loses is go backwards. In other words, we're going negative. So this would be -3. If it was gaining 3 yards, it'd be +3. For example, Veronica receives 5 bonus points for class. She's gaining 5, so it'd be like +5. So you see, just write the symbol that goes with it. However, whenever a number is positive, we don't have to write it. We just call it like +5 like that. Okay, the other ones are for you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to compare. And so I would like you to use the number line above there just because, the bigger numbers to the right. So I'm going to put a dot on both numbers. I'm switching to red. I'm putting a dot on 5 and a dot on -1. The number to the right is the biggest, so 5 is bigger than -1. And remember, the alligator eats the bigger number. And we would say that like this: 5 is greater than -1. Use the number line, maybe color code it so you can keep them straight. and then write the correct symbol, and then you also should know how to say it. Same thing for 13, 14, 15, and 16. Dots on the number line, and then what I want you to do is put them in order from least to greatest. Remember, negatives are always smaller than positives. On to absolute value. Okay, so absolute value is actually a very basic concept. Absolute value is a distance, and it's specifically how far a number is from 0. Well, the characteristic I would like to write down here is I want to write down it's always positive. And the reason that absolute value is always positive is because it's a distance, and when you're measuring with like a ruler, there's no negative numbers on there because we're always measuring forward. An example of absolute value would be something like this. We have like the number -3. There's these little bars that go around the outside. Those bars mean absolute value, and we want to say how far that is from 0, and -3 is 3 units from 0. Well, now I'm going to do a positive example. So let's say I have the number 5. I put the bars around 5. We want to find the absolute value of 5, which is also 5. One thing that people do is they tend to just switch the sign. Well, that's sort of right. Like, that's correct when it's a negative, but as you see how the positive, it just stays positive. Remember, absolute value is always positive. Okay, well, find the absolute value of those first 4. So just look at the example here. And then here you have to decide which one's bigger, 6 or the absolute value of -8. Well, remember, the absolute value of -8 is 8. So this question here is which is bigger, 6 or 8? We're not taking the absolute value of that because it's doesn't have the bars around it. But 8 is bigger than 6. Alligator eats the bigger one. We would say that is 6 is less than absolute value of -8. This last question, very simple. You just graph these 4 dots somewhere on this vertical number line here, and then answer the 3 questions. All right, that's your activity / worksheet / lesson for the day. If you have any questions on it, feel free to ask, and don't forget to do the IXLs that go with the lesson. You should already have those done, but make sure you're doing those just to stay caught up in class. All right. Okay, have a good day. See you, bye.